Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the Backlog Battle Podcast. I'm Alex. And in case this is the first time you've ever listened or watched the show, they basically talk to gamers from all walks of life and kind of figure out like who they are, what they do, and what drives them to create the kind of content that they love making. And today I have a very special guest. I know you as DizzyDizaster, but on this show we call you by your first name. It's Ben, aka DizzyDizaster. How's it going, man?
Good. Yeah, Ben, that's the name my mom gave me when I was born, and I've stuck with it for 37 years. So here we go.
Well, I'm glad you're here. And I've been wanting to get you on the show for a long time because, like, you and I talk a lot on Twitter, but ever since I had left Twitch, like, let's put it this way. Like, when you leave a platform to go to another platform, it's kind of difficult to kind of keep track of other people.
Absolutely.
Although I will admit, like, you know, over the past 7 years and stuff like that, like my wife and I will actually lurk on your channel and stuff. And I don't know if you remember who she is.
Absolutely.
Yeah, she was always like really chatty on your channel. And she says hi, by the way. You know, she and I basically, we're married now. So before, we kind of get into the nitty gritty and stuff of this interview and stuff, I want to take you back to maybe 2014, 2015, when I actually met you for the first time.
Yep, that was a good year for me.
It was a good year for you, but the circumstances that we met were not the happiest. And I don't know if you remember this, but we actually met through a Twitter thread where you, me, and Bunny Tails basically got a chargeback for like a PayPal thing back in the day. Do you remember that?
So chargebacks are unnecessary evil in this industry, but I haven't had one in a long time, thank God. That industry has evolved very much forward, thank God for that.
Basically, this guy went into each of our channels, donated a huge chunk of money, and then he charged it back. And then you put him on blast on Twitter. I remember that. I will never forget that.
So so we are talking about the same guy. So for me, it was within SimCity, but for you, it probably was another game. But yes, he actually he reached out to me last year.
Oh, last year.
It might actually have been around 6 months ago, and talked about how he's so much of a better person now and in a better place, and he's looking for forgiveness. And I was just like, not for me to forgive you, dude. That's your demon to fight. So people who are searching for that kind of stuff, like, I understand it at the same time, but he caused a tremendous amount of work. Now, I had a system in place because I was exposed to an individual who was overly generous prior to this individual. And it wasn't a case of the person didn't want to help me. She was dealing with stuff. And then one day she hit a hardship. And I said, okay, I had a certain amount saved up and I was able to help her out. And I was like, from now on, I'm keeping X amount of dollars for X amount of months. And so when this guy flipped back around, I was ready to go. But it was like, dude, no, you can't do that.
And that's kind of the thing that's crazy about this industry is that, a lot of people see us in this kind of jovial mode and stuff like that because we have to. And not knowing that there's so much admin stuff that we have to do in the background when we're not making videos or when we're not streaming that almost kind of like gets kind of shoved in the wayside. Like for me, for example, on YouTube, like people just think like, oh, you just make like reviews like out of thin air. I'm like, dude, do you know how long Persona 5 Royal is? It's 120 hours. It's not going to play by itself. You know what I mean?
I had this conversation with a small YouTuber yesterday, and he's a small YouTuber, but once again, another guy that looks like he's gonna take over the world soon. And his name is Jaws Unleashed. Jaw Unleashed. Jaws is what Mr. Beast calls him. So the reason I say Mr. Beast there is because his personality is so good. He's been on Mr. Beast's channel, I think 3 times as a contestant because he's just an incredible presence. Like, he's the sort of guy where I don't miss a beat when he's on. When he's on, I stop what I'm doing and he goes on my screen. And people are like, you need to do more content on YouTube. You only do one video every couple of days. And somebody goes, why don't you just take your videos from Twitch and put up gameplay videos? And I said, so I said to the person in the audience, I'm like, listen, you don't just put an uncut video on YouTube. I mean, you can, but people are looking for, you go to YouTube, you're looking for what you want to get. Like if you're going to look for a podcast or listen to your podcast, it's nice to put on a podcast where you can listen to it and go from there. Yeah. But when you're looking for a gameplay video, long cuts, you need to specifically look for that. If somebody wants to watch you play Minecraft, whoops, I'm sorry. I got a pug here who's temperamental. But if somebody wants to look for like a Minecraft gameplay through. They don't want to see you slogging through stone for 20 minutes. Yeah. They don't want to see this. They want to see you in the lava, dead, screaming, running out of the room, starting again, fast forward in the lava, dead, screaming, starting all over again. Because he's a Minecraft speedrunner. That's what they want to say. They don't want 4 hours of I'm going AFK to do this, that, the other thing. They need some editing. And that requires, and I always tell people, 10 times your view. So if you have a 4-hour stream, that's 40 hours of work right there in front of you, unless you're a much better editor than I am. And I think I do okay. So, 40 hours is without stops, without sleeping, without anything is the greater part of 2 days. So it's like, oh yeah, where do you find that? Where do you find 40 hours to do one video? But
Exactly. And and to kind of cycle back to the actual event and stuff, I think that's actually really interesting, because even though it was such a bad event, we got into talking, and even from that conversation alone, I got a sense that you were very articulate and very smart about any of the decisions that you make on your channel, and it's actually led me to watch you and your content, and not knowing that my soon-to-be wife at the time had already been watching you the whole time.
So I'm thrilled to hear that, but what might be even crazy to you is you're not the first couple that got together because of my channel.
Okay.
That's like some weird dimension that happens. It's one of the most cool dimensions. Whenever I get into an interview, that's something I actually, crazily enough, bring up. Going back to really quickly to the chargeback thing, I'm always a strong believer in adversity breeds the strongest allies.
I agree.
And usually some of my strongest friends I meet through I either have a disagreement with them or in the vicinity of them, and then people can kind of see your dimensions. And I think people they attach onto how you deal in that sort of situation. So it was kind of refreshing to hear that. But I have as you probably know, listeners may not, in 2015, Russians started to show up in my channel magically, corn growing in a field. Now, there was a big Russian streamer. He decided to raid me because he saw my hat. And then when he came in, I started bombing off explosions. At that time, raids with explosions were kind of a new thing, I guess, or a rare thing. Now everybody's got them. But he loved it. So after he was done, I decided to go say thank you to him because, he took the time to do that. And I said thank you to him in Russian, and that blew their minds away because everybody wants to know English, but an American learning Russian, that was really interesting to them. And that inevitably hit off, which is now 6 years of my life of learning Russian and half my audience of being, from Russia Russian. So what was interesting about that too was I didn't just meet him, I met everybody. And my editor, who is my editor for YouTube at the time, who voluntarily made videos for me, which was blowing me away. He's actually my editor for TikTok now, which is crazy how things come full circle. Yeah. And he actually gets paid now too, because I have an agreement with him to do that. But he ended up meeting his girlfriend, who was my emote and graphics editor at the time, and they're still together to this day. One of my videos that I put up on YouTube is a video about them and how they changed my life in individual ways. And at the end, I talk about how they came together. One of my moderators, who was my lead moderator at the time, he's gone on now in terms of doing what he's doing. He was one of the people that was there when the first Russian stream happened, and he understood that I was a little overwhelmed. I thought it was bots at first. Looking at Russian, I always refer to it as the moon runes because it looks like it's from another planet. It's not quite, the English characters, but it almost is. So you're like, I can decode this. And it's like, no. The second you find out the letter P is R and, the X is H and everything else, you're just like, oh my God. But he decided to take the initiative to learn how to at the very least put it in the translator and translate it back what they were saying. And he was really, really doing this with a lot of people. And some of the Russians were completely blown away by his, his just this step of kindness. Instead of saying, speak English, we were saying, hang on, we need to translate this. Yeah. And he ended up talking with one girl, and a couple of years back, she flew to Mexico and they got married. Wow. So, So he literally got married because of that one event. And it's awesome to me because I met my wife on Ragnarok Online. Nice. Right? She was a GM on the server, the shard I was playing on. Wow. Shards are kind of like those servers that we don't talk about servers. I guess they call them illegal servers. But her server had the rates I was looking for. And I was like, all right, I'm going to go on there. And I went on there and I was like, wait a minute, you live near me. And we decided to hang out. And that was in 2006. And, we've been married now for, we got married in 2012. So math is not my strong suit. So yeah, you can see the internet relationship thing at that time was just kind of starting. And, dating apps were starting to be a thing a couple of years later. And when I found the internet, I never left. And that was in 1996. So here I am. It's 2021. Holy crap. So hearing about other relationships nowadays, it's more common, but to hear that, there was some influence in there where I was able to help somebody else find happiness. That's like, yeah, right. Doing the right thing. Let's go. All those unfollows don't matter anymore. Let's go.
No, it doesn't. Not at all.
It really doesn't. In the grand scheme of thing, the pursuit of happiness is the most important thing in life, regardless of where you are and what situation that you're in. And if you can kind of inspire people, and I was talking to another streamer about this morning, there's people who come home from work and they hate their work. I know that because I was coming home from a job previously that I had before this. But there was a job that I came home previously when I first started streaming where I just could not stand it. I would come home miserable. And even my wife was like, you're not happy. You need to get out of there. And I inevitably did. And I have a new job now that I actually really like. But you come home and you're just like, and you tune into a caster who's not happy or something. And it's just like, but then you tune into somebody who's laughing and that it might not be exactly who they are, but they're at least enjoying the situation, or they're dealing with something and they're dealing with this and they're dealing with that. And you're just like, what? I'm not even thinking about that crap anymore. I'm thinking about watching him fall into lava again. And I'm going to play a scream sound effect with 200 bits and make sure that he feels the pain and call him Mr. Lava Lava. That's what I was doing last night.
That's really awesome. Yeah.
It allows you to step out of that and just be somewhere else for a few minutes. And it's interactive. That's the step above going to a fantasy world like a Star Wars or getting into music, which has its own inspirational characteristics, or a video game. You're interacting with this person and you may never meet this person. You may never know them, but you're getting something out of it, and it's shaping the way that you think about stuff. You have so much power as a broadcaster, and it's something I see a lot of people take for granted a lot. And it's to me, I have a thing literally on my monitor that says, you are them and they are you. And that's my way of reminding people that every struggle that I'm dealing with, people are dealing with similar or stronger struggles, and people are having bad days and good days and everything. And it seems obvious, like, you are them, they are you. What are you, an alien? But, but no, it's kind of just a reminder to tell me, we're all in this fight, and we have to do what we can to not only try to enrich what's going on for ours, but the experience for everybody. Because we don't know when that ends. We have time, and the time is the only currency we have on Earth that we don't know how much we have. It's limited, and we can't get more. And people are spending that on you, and they're just doing it because you're sitting there, just like, I'm just gonna die in the same monster in Terraria for 2 hours. Yeah. And people invest 2 hours of their limited existence in you. It's like, wow.
It's a lot. So let's unpack, because there's a lot of things that you said, and I think what's kind of what I really love about your channel is that it's rooted in inclusivity, positivity, and it shows with every single stream. And I don't think that's quite common in Twitch these days. Like, do you want to talk about how you came up to that? Is that your natural personality, or is it just something that
I think there's some of it that comes into my natural personality. I think that growing up in a situation like I did, where I grew up in a very normal situation as an American kid, American white kid. It's, we have a very standard cookie cutter. It goes everywhere. But I grew up in a situation where I felt kind of isolated from the world around me, in that I immediately turned to, as I said, in 96, I found the internet, and that was it for me. I knew what I was going to do and where my future was going to lie. And I continued to do that, much to the chagrin of people who, the quote unquote friends that we have back then, who are, friends one day and not the next. Much to my family's chagrin, where they're just like, are you ever going to go outside again? And my answer was no. And I know what it was like to be the one person on the internet, as opposed to everybody's on the internet. Now you're almost an outcast if you're not on it. And I've watched that happen to over, 25 years. And like, to me, I know what it feels like to kind of be, I don't want to say ostracized because that feels like a dramatic word, but kind of left out, I guess. You know, my brother had all his friends. He did all of his things and he kind of did his own thing. He met his wife when he was, when I was just starting to get into this. So he was leaving and my parents were dealing with their own crap. So I was just like, this is where I'm going to go. And I went through the trials and tribulations of being a teenager on the internet, which are plenty. Teenagers get into trouble on the internet, especially the early internet. You think people are your friends? They're not your friends.
Yeah.
You trust people who they say they are? They're not who they say they are. You think somebody's this and they're that. And then, there's people who have ill intentions. They get themselves into your life with the attempt to exploit you for this, that, and the other thing. Now, I was fortunate where it was nothing super heavy, but I was a teenager on the internet, and I have I guess, empathy for a teenager growing up on the internet nowadays. You make one little mistake and the end, Carl Jacobs, he's a Minecrafter and a Mr. Beast team. I guess he's more of a Mr. Beast team than a Minecrafter, but Minecraft and Roblox are what he's known for. His community is insanely big. I think he averages like 175,000 viewers on Twitch. And I knew him when he was a 10 viewer streamer. Like he had 10 viewers and I would hang out with him. I was like, yo, he's cool. But he ended up taking some time off, going to work for Mr. Beast and creating a huge, amazing experience for himself. And now I always tell him, dude, make me so proud, kick ass, shape the world. You got the power.
Yeah.
His viewers found out that he watched Ice Poseidon and they were furious. And they were, a younger crowd who felt like they were doing the right thing by telling him, you know what, you're going to be held accountable for this. Now, I get it. I understand it. I completely understand it. But at the same time, like Carl was like 13 and 14, and he thought this is what he needed to do to get into this industry. He thought, this is what I need to do to learn how to get into it. Everybody's spamming, CX in the chat. I'm just going to spam it. Try hard 7, I think they spammed. And it was like, he did that. So people found his chat logs and they were like, look what you did. I can't believe you did this. You offended me. And it's kind of like, oh no. Like, I absolutely believe in accountability for your actions and what you did. And he apologized for it. He could maybe not see the gravity of what people felt, but it's so hard to navigate that. I could have never done it when I was his age. He's in his 20s now, and it's just, the internet raises you. And I guess my philosophy on the whole thing is, if somebody comes over there and they step out of their comfort zone because they want to be a part of something, I know what it feels like for somebody to say, well, who are you? What the heck? And you're just like, yeah, no, never mind. I want, especially with the Russian thing, I had a very pivotal decision to make. And that was, I just got hit with a raid that was the biggest raid of my life at the time, which was 1,000 people, I think. Yeah. And back in 2015, that was a big raid. So it still is, to be fair. But I sat there and I was like, this is insane. This really made me feel good. I go, what can I do to do something about this situation? And I just decided to go say thank you, spasiba, in Russian. And they were fascinated by it. They're like, we want to interview you. Come on the channel. We'll have us translator and everything else. And they asked me all these questions. And, and from there, I actually met like fluent English speakers, and they became my moderators almost immediately. Like on the day of, I threw trust to the wind, and it landed in my favor, thank God. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, a lot of the inclusivity stems from just kind of feeling left out, I think. But more, I would say that the last 5 or 6 years has been really kind of an awakening for me as somebody who's never left the country they live in, and somebody who's never really exposed to the oceans outside of this. It made me realize that I was fortunate to have a lot of the experiences I did, and I was fortunate to make some mistakes in my life that I did that, not necessarily big mistakes that everybody makes, but I didn't have to be. I was lucky enough to get out of those situations relatively unscathed. And some people, depending on where they are, where they're from, where they live, who their parents are, varies to what happens to them.
Yes.
And I'm very fortunate in my position. So I'm in a position where I can people can look at me and say, well, what does this guy say? He talks a lot. Maybe he knows what he's doing. and I can kind of make people feel better about their situation. I can make them feel good, and I can give them that positive emotion. And then I know what that does for me especially when I'm my own worst enemy, which we all are. And I wanted to convey that. I wanted to say to these folks, you can be a part of this. You may not speak my language, but I can take 2 seconds to right click and get Google Translate and figure out what you're saying. And if it's a troll, that's the way it goes. And I've had people tell me that.
Yeah.
I don't do it because everybody who comes from X country says Y to me, and therefore, no. And I'm like,
yeah.
I'm sure 150 million people don't feel the same way, but that's the way that they want to handle the situation. And some people can't. They like, if I didn't have my moderators, maybe it turns out differently. Maybe I'm just like, guys, stop spamming. I can't read it. I'm sorry. And they move on to the next one because that's what they were doing. They were going to channel to channel to channel, but they happened to stop on me and get that reception. So a lot of it is rooted in kind of feeling like I was doing my own thing and having everybody, including my family, be like, you're wasting your time on your computer. And me kind of going, no, I'm not. Let me show you how. And I don't really, that's still something I think about from time to time. And I know that, my family has come around and my friends have come around and everybody in my life has come around. But I still think about those days where they were just like, just a waste. I'm just like, all right. And I don't want to know that people feel like that. I want to do my part, right?
Yeah. And I can definitely empathize with that because for the longest time, my family was like, why are you spending all your time on computers? That's such a dead end thing, That's our generation. I mean, I'm not going to. I'm 37, so I'm just giving you a little context. I just turned 42, so.
Oh, there you go. So you're exactly the same. I wasn't going to be like, oh, what's your age? I'm still of the generation where doors get held. I still understand the value of walking up to a door and holding it for people. And I think a lot of that is starting to get lost. You're not aware of what's going on around you. People have that expectation of you and you don't want to build. It's like, it's such a jigsaw puzzle of reality now. And I'm just, it's whatever. I know what the world looks like outside of my computer. I know what a world without Wi-Fi is. My 13-year-old nephew will never know what that's like. So it's validation. A lot of it stems into validation and trying to get it. And pursuit of validation can be a crazy strong subject. And it can get you into places where there's a lot of people who want to feel validated in the world today. And it takes on almost a cult-like reality, minimally in stan culture, maximally in political culture, where people who are parts of whatever is happening they just want to be a part of something and they think they're doing the right thing. A lot of people think they're doing the right thing and they're just being led astray by people with bad intentions. So,
or they're not getting the proper direction to course correct,
Sure, context. Exactly. Yeah. Like you tell somebody, well, Carl is supporting somebody who's bad, referencing back to Carl Jacobs. And you're going to say, yeah, wow, that guy offended me. That's a bad thing. You don't get the context that he was a kid. He wasn't really supporting him. He was typing in chat. He doesn't believe in what he does. And it's like, if we start getting rid of all the people who make mistakes in their lives, we're going to be stuck with 2 people. We're going to be stuck with the people who don't do anything anymore out of fear that they're going to hurt people because they genuinely don't want to. And we're going to be stuck with the people who unapologetically hurt everybody because they don't care. And I don't think there's very much an in-between if we start getting real crazy about it. So that worries me that we get rid of good content because of that. But and like I said, accountability is the culture that I love. You should be accountable for your actions. If you do make a mistake, you should have to, take some time to understand that mistake at the very least. It's not say cry over an apology and pick up your dog and go, oh no. But, it's a learning process, when you get in an accident with a car, they call it an accident. It is an accident in most cases, but you still got to pay for it. You still got to go through your insurance. You still got to go to the hospital sometimes. You still have to go to court sometimes, but it doesn't make you a criminal or evil unless that was your intent, but you have to go through what it's like to rebuild what was destroyed. And
It kind of goes with what you said about that you believe that adversity kind of strengthens the soul and then strengthens you as a person. And a subject matter that I brought up to a previous guest was that it seems like in this day and age, a lot of us try to create an environment where we're not exposed to adversity, that when we are exposed to adversity, we have no idea what to do because we've never been challenged, you know?
Right. Oh, yeah. There's a lot of people on that. In the internet, you can be whatever you want to be. And there's people who are so numb to the reality of no adversity that they create their own adversity based on other people's adversity. Like that's the thing now is the wild world of straw man arguments. Well, if you're supporting this group, well, clearly you're not supporting that group. And it's like, that's not how it works. No. That's not how it works. If your arm is broken, you treat your arm. You don't treat your leg. So
that's a good one.
There's a lot of cases where people feel left out because they're not on the end of oppression, but that is a fundamental lack of understanding what it's like to be on the other side of something. And I have, like I said, I haven't been through anything so life traumatic that I've felt like my life is in peril. But I can absolutely 100% understand and listen to the folks who have been at that end of it and say they're speaking with conviction. And to me, that's enough. I don't need proof to be able to tell a person that they lost a job or didn't get a job or got pulled over because, you know, of certain things. I've been unfairly pulled over before. It sucked, but to have that happen so often in my life, like you build an animosity, you build things that make you feel uncomfortable. And I hate feeling uncomfortable. Like I really, really do. And if the one thing I can convey to people or try to provide to people, it's try not to put them in that situation. Try to listen to what they're dealing with. Allow them the opportunity to speak. I know that's rich coming from me, Mr. Nonstop Talk, right? but yeah, we all do our little part. And a lot of what makes me tick is my own. I try to be loud every now and then, but I know I'm not. But I'm just hoping sometimes to shout to the void, not so much because I need a response. I'll use my Comcast examples. I scream at Comcast on Twitter. I don't need people to tell me that Comcast sucks in their house, or I don't need them to give me $1 million. I do that because that's how they listen. And I know that they're listening that way. And I know that a good chunk of my audience on any given day are people who speak only a little English, or they don't know how to talk back in English, so they just listen. And that's who I really speak to. I speak to the lurkers, as you know. I always have that mind in there that you have the opportunity to have this. And when you're on a stage, it's visual. You can see, all right, there's 1,000 people out there, I'm speaking to all of them. They're going to have that chance to respond if they want to. But if not, I can visually see that they're attentively here. You can't do that on the internet.
I want to pause a little bit, pause a little bit, because you talked about the Comcast conversation. Did you know what happened to me in that conversation?
They tweeted, "Do you need help?" to you, right?
Yeah, they did. And I'm like, I'm not a Comcast customer.
Yeah. So their support system is ridiculous. I'll tell you. Everybody's like, well, Comcast works great for you, and it works. I'm like, that's what I pay them for, to work. I'm not going to give them credit because they work. Yeah. Whenever there's adversity with them, it is a month-long process. And I think this time we're good to go. I got a phone number of a guy sitting on my desk right next to me. So he will get a text if I get so much as a frame drop tonight. So
wow.
Yeah. Well, for the price I pay him, let me tell you. But yes, they reply back to everybody individually, but what they're really good about, and they used to do this in the past, but now they used to reply to all and say it to everybody. Now if you say the word Comcast, they take everybody else out of it. Oh. And they reply only to you. And it's like, wait a minute, but I had nothing to do with it. I was just replying to you. Yeah. Like in the past, you'd all be able to see the embarrassment. Now they just limit the embarrassment to each interaction. So yeah, my moderators in Canada, they love it. I have pictures of, my moderator in Toronto. He's like, Comcast reached out to me again. I am in Canada. I can't do anything to me here.
Yeah. It's like, I got Rogers. I have other problems to do.
Yeah, it's crazy. But I mean, that's Comcast though. There was a quote I heard once. I don't remember who said it, but be ruthless with corporations, but be nice to people. And basically what it means is, you got to kind of hold your own when it comes to the world of corporate environments, because they're very much don't care about you. But, whenever I give the opportunity to talk to a tech, like I had a tech in my house yesterday, 2 days ago, cool dude, awesome guy from Puerto Rico. We were hanging out talking. He's not happy with his job. He wants to go. He wants to drive a truck for a living. That's what I love. I love the dynamics and dimensions of people. Like that's one of my fascinations.
I want to talk about that because, like, based off of just a conversation that we've had, I mean, you mostly talked, so conversation is questionable.
But really.
Like
I said, gift the gab.
And, and obviously I'm joking. I'm enjoying, like, hearing a lot about you.
I appreciate that.
Is that you really kind of hone in on the human spirit by infusing a lot of empathy in a lot of your interactions with people, which is, I think, why your channel is so prolific and so popular amongst people. I think, for me, for example, like even though I make content on YouTube and stuff, there's still a community that grows around it and stuff. And and before we started really the show officially and stuff, I feel like we if I remember correctly, we talked about how you hosted like subscriber nights like every Saturday every week. And to me, like, I even struggled just doing one per month. It's kind of crazy. And so I guess, like, my question to you then is, like, how did you find out that community would be the rock where you build your stream around? And I know this is a very similar question to what I asked before, but this is more concentrated towards that community building piece of it.
I think they were the tell on that one. When I started to do this and people started to show up and then show up regularly, I can call out Moojak. I don't know. I think who
I remember
Moojak
him.
is?
Yeah.
He would be such a regular in my channel back in 2013 that if you typed 2 or 3 things in a row in 2013 on Twitch, it didn't say your name. So he would type so much to keep my chat active that his name would scroll off the screen and I'd have to scroll down and see who it was who was talking. And he was my first real regular. Him and Kilius, the guy who got married to the Russian girl. They were my first 2 regulars, and I'll never forget him for that. And I met Moo at PAX. Eventually he came out, so now he's a regular over there. And he ended up meeting a girl on Twitch, and they're doing great. And he's getting married and such. So it's very cool to see the way that people's lives start to progress forward. And I think that a lot of what the community building is I kind of got that opportunity to determine what I wanted to do. And I think on Twitch, you can successfully do it however you want to do it. If you want to be somebody who just screams and yells, I think there's an audience for that. If you want to be somebody who's an actor, who a vast majority of our big content creators are actors. They're not, and I'm not in the literal sense, like they're not Tom Cruise as Ethan Hunt from Mission Impossible, but they are putting on a persona. They're putting on a character. Like you go meet Dr. Disrespect, he's not the same person off. Go meet Benny Fitz, he's not a blue puppet. He's an awesome guy. Actually, Benny Fitz is one of my good friends. So
that's awesome.
Him and I talk almost every day on Discord about the randomest stuff. But that's what's great is you can do that. Me, I kind of come at it from this is who I am. So when people meet me, they're like, they feel like they already know me, and I'm happy about that. I don't have to reintroduce them. I'm not some curmudgeon who's gotta do this again. I love going to conventions. I love meeting people. I'm limited only by the energy that I have in that day. So I would not sleep during conventions if I felt like that would be conducive to a good conversation, but it's not. I need my sleep. But yeah, I think the community inspiration of something is something that was instilled upon me by the community that rallied itself around me. I think originally I was fascinated by the fact that people gave a crap of watching me play Don't Starve and dying immediately, or SimCity for that matter. SimCity was my first big battle. Yeah. But also the fact that these people, I firmly started to grab the full concept of what time is and its value at that point. Because now I was starting to say, I'm waking up, I'm going to work, I'm coming home, I'm streaming, I'm sleeping. And I started to say, wow, time suddenly seems like it's a lot shorter than it is. And I started to value my time. And at the same time, I was like, wow, people are not only doing this, they're doing this to watch me. So they're theoretically, they're getting what I give them, but they're also giving me money. So they're literally paying to listen to me do this. And it's like, I had a moment where I was like, whoa, because I originally had some folks who really invested heavily into me and validated what I was doing. So that was big. And that made me see that people genuinely gave a crap about what this became. And it became more than just my channel at that point. It became our community. And at that point, it was like, all right, this is what I want. I want some autonomy in my community where people feel like they can hang out and become friends together and meet each other. That you know, that was a big thing of mine. And one of the things that I always look at and I always smile about is before we do our sub Saturday at 9 p.m. Big part of the reason we do it at 9 p.m. is because from 6 to 9, they're playing Dungeons and Dragons together. Nice. They've had a campaign that's been going, I think, for 5 years. And it's, I couldn't tell you the first thing about what happens in that channel. I mean, I know D&D, but I don't know, because they've managed to create their own little environment of their own and they hang out together. When we go to PAX, they talk about it and everything else. But they feel comfortable enough to come here in this community and welcome people to be a part of it and spend their time moderating. And I have a community organizer. She's amazing. She's organizing stuff through COVID, trying to get everybody to get together at some point. We're finally doing it. We're all going up to New Hampshire to a big arcade. So, and it's like, I can't pay these people, and they know I can't. I'm not some streamer who's making millions and millions of dollars, or even a living wage at this point. Part of it's because I'm doing it part-time, but another part is target audience. Their dollar is worth 80 to 1 right now. So it's like they spend the equivalent of $25 on a tier 1 sub every month when they subscribe right now, which Twitch is changing that soon. But they're making regional pricing, which is going to change my sub number right quick. But and it's going to make them more comfortable too. Like, I have a big thing where I feel very uncomfortable where people are spending money they don't have. I make that very, very clear. But it's the thing though, is I started when I was 29. I'm 37 now. And I willingly opened up my mind to evolve as a human being and listen as much as I talk, which seems like an impossible task. But I try to be as receptive as possible to what's going on around me and try to figure it out, especially if it perplexes me. I want to know. There's never an answer to everything, for sure, but there is steps in the right direction. So that's a big part of what made this a community.
That's awesome. And I think that's actually a really good lesson, because I'm still fumbling on that idea. Like, for example, like on Discord, I think it was in March where I decided to collapse a lot of our channels from like 37 to 15. And of course, the community, you know, because my thought was like, oh, it's going to make things simpler and stuff. But like, what actually happened is it actually unfortunately complicated the issue, because what I was ignoring were the conventions of that medium, right? Like, you know, and so, you know, I kind of scaled back on that in April, but hearing you right now, I'm like thinking to myself, like, you know, and just kind of taking in what you said, it is true that your community it's not built by you. It's the community building itself and formulating around this concept. And it is our job as content creators to just outright listen, because that's the best thing that we can do, you know?
Absolutely. Like, there's a channel, and I actually clicked on it while you were saying that, called Anime Hypu. And that, I don't watch any anime just because I don't watch anime. I don't have anything against that. It's just not my cup of tea. And I have it muted in my Discord because I have nothing to add to them besides I'm making a joke every now and then, and they don't want to hear my crap every day. So, you know, so I just looked at it, and I mean, it's one of my most active channels, and there's some people in there that are active subs of mine that's the channel they talk in. So I'm like, where the hell have you been? And they're like, I'm on your Discord every day. What do you mean? And I'm like, you know, so like there's a Final Fantasy channel. I don't play Final Fantasy anymore, but you know, Moo Jack and Diane, dude, they play it every day. So there they are going back and forth, putting memes today about Final Fantasy. And it's like, oh, okay. You know, that's awesome. And they feel comfortable enough to invest their time, not only in you, but the environment that you created. They're inviting their friends and their family into this environment. Like the guy I talked about who danced for follows. You know, he invited his dad to come in there. Now he comes to the conventions, he brings his fiance. You know, it's like, wow, we haven't just created just this one person. We've created and encouraged those people to say, come check this guy out. And at the same time, we've built this community that I think would go beyond me. Like, I honestly feel like today, if it was like, oh, I can't stream anymore because of some reason outside of my own, you know, they would be upset, but that would go on. Like, their friendships would go on, their relationships would go on. And that's, I guess they refer to that as a legacy. And if my legacy is that's a damn good way to leave a legacy. That's for sure.
Yeah, that it's funny because like I'm kind of reminded of a very similar question that I asked, Hironobu Sakaguchi, the father of Final Fantasy. Like he was like, I don't know if I've been thinking, or like I don't want to misquote him, but I think he said something along the lines of like, I don't think like I would call what I want to impart to people a legacy, kind of like in a very humble way. And I think it's the way that you phrase it though, I think is very important because as content creators, we want our impact on people to kind of live on beyond who we are. It's
our lessons to them, more or less. Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, it's not like a formal lesson, like here's what you need to learn today, this word in Russian. It's more or less that, this is what I found in my life. This is how I react to the situation, especially when politics come up. You can imagine the political conversations that will come up sometimes between Russians and Americans.
Yes.
Oh my God. Let me tell you, that was a rough 6 months. But at the end of the day, like I tell people, I feel this way, and I've had the opportunity to listen to people who feel this way, and that's why I feel this way. And I understand if you feel differently, I'm not your God, and you have the right to feel differently from me, but this is how I feel, and this is my environment. And if this doesn't make you comfortable, there's plenty of great people out there where you could probably find something that'll fit you. But, I'm very open-minded when it comes to that sort of stuff, because I understand how I have another perspective where it's almost a weird, I use music as a great example. We had the 90s. We know our 90s music. We love our 90s music, our 80s music. But for this purpose, we'll talk about the 90s. Sure. They had our 90s 10 years later. So they took that sound and made all their own music to it. So one of my intros to learning a language is music. Music is huge. So I went and I listened to their music, and I'm listening to it the last couple of years, and I'm like, I'm living the 90s again. I love 90s music. So I get like a chance to do it again, but it's almost like this completely isolated environment. And it's isolated by economics. It's isolated by politics. It's isolated by language. It's isolated by time. And now I'm having the opportunity to kind of reach in and be like, what's going on in here? Yeah. They get exposed to the American stuff all the time. They turn on Stranger Things. Oh, look, the Russian enemy. They turn on, a war movie. Oh, look, the Russian enemy. They turn on like Armageddon, the movie. Oh, look, it's a Russian. And he's talking, it's a Russian space station. Like they get it. Like it's almost a joke to them. And they have that in their culture too. Their movies don't go quite as far because there's only 350 million Russian speakers. There's 4.5 billion English speakers as a first or a second or something insane like that. But it's really interesting to have that opportunity to look at something which billions of people are living, have lived or lived in that culture and since existence, and it's completely separate. Like I couldn't tell you the first thing going on right now in South Korea or China. I couldn't. Yeah. And they also probably don't understand my daily life. And I think that once I realized that became one of the biggest fascinations ever was, holy crap, there's somebody else waking up in the morning, getting really upset that they have to go to work. And then from there, it's just a completely different avenue. Like the way that they get to work, the work that they do, how they watch their television, what they have, and I took such a deep fascination to that. And I didn't realize how much it fascinated me until I was exposed to it. And I was like, oh, this is so cool. Like, and if you told me I'd be learning language in high school, I would tell you you're a liar and to get out of here. And now I'm learning one of the hardest language for an English speaker because it's interesting. It's exposing me to, it's making me, and I use the word kind of loosely, it's making me uncomfortable. And I don't mean, I mean like it's struggle through it. And I think that things that make you uncomfortable, maybe, struggling and the literal meaning of the word, sometimes are the biggest lessons that we can learn because negative emotions are very visceral. They're very strong. And can feel when you're angry. You feel the pulse. You feel, where you're nervous. Every second lasts an hour. When you're happy, the day ends. Yes. That's it. You had a great day, and those emotions stick with you, and sometimes they'll stay with you, but you always feel those negative emotions stronger. So uncomfortable kind of delves in that realm just a little deep enough for it'll be kind of like enough to teach you something and stick with you. And it's like, okay, cool. What can we turn that into?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting too, because like I believe in that. it so much that every time I make a video, even if it's the same kind of video, I have to change it a little bit and make myself feel uncomfortable. And even, for this podcast specifically, I made the decision to make a new channel and not just dump it. And it's crazy, right? Yeah. And people are going to be like, why are you doing this? You're restarting over. But it's like, there's two different logic behind that, but which I'm not going to really cover here because it's not really consequential. Yeah. But the bottom line is, it's another avenue where I don't have to worry about the algorithm for YouTube, for example. And I know that YouTube will be like, okay, this is a podcast channel. This is that kind of content. And on the other channel, I can focus on anything else gaming related.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah. And, I didn't discover that until like maybe about a month or so ago, which, I kind of feel bad because I feel like sometimes, my Patreon people are kind of left in the dark and not talking about them. But at the same time, nobody's checking my posts. So I guess that's
the thing. It's like it's a million. If you had 1 million people and you decided to switch course, then it's a bigger decision. But if people enjoy your content, they're generally going to follow the content where it goes. And you're not like saying, oh, I'm not doing that content over again. Or you're not, it's not wildly different. Like you have, there was a content creator from years ago. I think he was named the Spoony One. Mm-hmm. I think you know who he is. He was, you might not, but he was one of the original YouTubers, and he created a ton of awesome content back when, Angry Video Game Nerd was doing it, and he was keeping pace, like really cool stuff. But he got so popular that it roasted him, and he ended up deciding, I want to go do wrestling content now. Yeah. But at that point, it was like he had so many paying customers, and they're just like, what?
Yeah, I know.
And eventually, he even stopped that, and he started to just do political tweets. And now all he does is scream on Twitter, and his YouTube is dead, his Patreon is dead, and everything else. And it's like,
it's just crazy, like, because one term that's become really popular over the past decade or so is personal branding. And as far as that goes, like, that's such a whiplash of just a shift. So tough. It is.
It's so tough. Like, if somebody asks, like, they're like, describe your community in 3 sentences. And I'm like, I can, but it's going to make no sense to you. Yeah. I have a multilingual community that's primarily based in CIS countries, and I speak Russian, and I play RimWorld, Terraria, Don't Starve, and in Minecraft, and I try to have an inclusive environment. And it's like, what the freaking, what's on your head is the next question out of their mouth. Yeah. Well, yeah. Oh, believe me. I mean, like a trucker. I know it in a couple languages, and it's funny because the Joe Unleashed guy I was telling you about before, he doesn't swear. So I always try to trick him into swearing in Russian. We got him to swear in Russian the other day. I was like, yes!
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's hard to describe yourself. It's really, really hard. But there is something, back to the uncomfortable thing for just a second. Sure. That's actually my secret to TikTok, being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I do almost nothing but Russian karaoke on TikTok. And 2 things that made me, or at least originally, they don't now, 2 things that used to make me really uncomfortable: speaking a foreign language that I barely know, and singing.
I see.
And I'm singing in a foreign language in those, and people find it to be the most fascinating thing ever. So I was like, all right, if they like it, let's do it. And I just continued to do it. And now that's my brand on there. So, I think people have this sixth sense where they can kind of detect some instance of genuineness, right? I think when they invest into something, they can detect that. They can detect that you're not trying to, pull a fast one on them. Like, if you look at one of my karaoke videos where I'm trying to speak Russian, I'm not like going blah 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 Russian accent. Like, I'm actually trying to sing this in Russian, and I'm struggling, and people can see that. So, and that's really my secret. It's just finding something that people like, that you can do, that you might not be used to doing, and give it a shot. And if it works, there you go. There's your brand. Yeah. And that's, I think, where a lot of content creators get stuck, is they get 1,000, let's say they get 10,000, maybe they get 1 million people from doing something, and then they feel stuck to do that. And it's like, they're like, why am I plateauing? Why am I not growing? Why am I moving in reverse? And it's like, they don't want to take that risk and lose, X amount now to potentially get a plus in the future. Like I'm doing that a lot now too, is I'm kind of evolving the way that I learn stuff. And I've done that multitude of times where, at one point I was like, maybe I don't want to learn Russian anymore. Maybe I do. Yeah. And now I'm back into, I don't want to just learn Russian. I want to learn 5 languages. And so it's like, but I'm prepared to do what needs to be done to go on with that. But who knows? A year from now, I might say, that's not the thing to do. Mm-hmm. But it's all, you can't be afraid to experiment and to grow. Major companies do it all the time. That's how they grow their products. Think about things like Clear Pepsi. That's an attempt that they have to do it. Then they do stuff like Cherry Pepsi, and it's like the best-selling brand they ever have. But they would have never known unless they did that. So,
and that's kind of the thing that's crazy to me is that people, it kind of goes back to what you and I talked about, like of this concept of risk aversion, and not realizing that by creating that additional risk, you sometimes come out with some of the best work. I'm reminded of a story that Hideo Kojima told way back in the 90s when he was making like Metal Gear Solid, and people forget this these days because we're spoiled with technology and stuff like that, right?
Something new every day.
Exactly. And I remember him like on a magazine showing this Lego model of the level design of one of the areas in Metal Gear Solid. Like he literally designed the levels using Lego. And and nowadays and stuff, people are like, oh, we need to have tools to design it and then test that area. I'm like, there are ways to kind of prototype things in a much simpler way when, especially today in this day and age where video games are getting more expensive, we're only moving further in that direction as opposed to regressing and figuring out how to make things simpler. And I think you hit it a nail in the head is that, a lot of what we're creating now is mostly convenience, that in a way, sometimes we lose the plot in some ways, like why we're humans and why we have this brain here is to solve problems, And
it's a logical loss too, because once again, it kind of ties into the contextual thing about the way people think about certain things is there's context for a reason for a person to do things the way they are back in the day because there was no other way, or that was the ingenuity behind it. Nowadays they have a tool that does it, but you still don't see the nuts and bolts. Another good example of that was Gaming Historian has some incredible videos on how Mario Brothers was made, how Mario 2 was made, how Mario 3 was made, and they show you the drafting paperwork that they use to make the Mario levels, and they're coloring in the squares, and they're putting the mushroom here, and they're doing that, and they literally go, okay, now a programmer has to go type each individual line of that into the computer. And then they test it and they go, oh, look, you put a block in the wrong place. And it's like, now you boot up your Switch and you have Mario Editor on there. And it's like, you don't think about that. You don't think about what the struggle was. And we're not talking about 100 years ago. This was in our lifetime. And it's like, like you see all these crazy things where you see people talking about, the story of Tetris was another one they did. And I was watching the story of Tetris and I'm like, wow, this is such a fascinating story. Look at this. And they're like, well, this person lives today with his family and his 4-year-old kid. And I'm like, wait a minute, 1989. You think you're watching a historical document, but you really aren't. You're really just watching something that happens, and all the people in this story are still alive. And this is something that's still happening. But it's ultimately inspiring, though, because it tells you that this industry is new. I remember days where there was no Twitch. Twitch is barely a decade old, and there's gonna be another player in this. And if you stick to your nuts and bolts, and you find out what works for you, and you innovate. You're not gonna be the top of Twitch tomorrow. You don't know the people that you need to know. You don't have the exposure you need to. You're not playing Minecraft or doing this and any other, but you're doing something unique. Or maybe you're doing those things and you're getting buried under the mountain of other streams. You just need to stick to what you're doing and do it. And then inevitably, hopefully, maybe, if you put enough feelers out there, you do enough social media, you play enough games, the spotlight comes your way. And then that's when you need to be prepared. And that's the biggest lesson I instill on these small streamers. Be prepared for the spotlight, because it's going to come, and it might come once, it might come multiple times, but you'll get the chance, especially if you build a good product. People will glom to it and they'll be like, all right, let's go. But when you get that spotlight work, you somehow magically end up, everybody crashes on Twitch but you, and people are coming to your channel. Can you handle 10,000 people in the same exact environment where you were? And with the Russians, that happened with me. I had 75 people, and then I had 1,500. And I needed to be able to provide something to these 1,500 that made them go, I like this guy. I don't understand what the hell he's saying. I don't know where he's from. It's way late at night, but I like this guy. So I'm gonna click that follow button. Yeah. And so when there's people that click that follow button are some of my closest friends in the world now. They do, they moderate for me now. They help me solve problems with my endings and my verbs in the past tense in Russian. So, it's just be prepared for that moment. And whatever that is, don't get uncomfortable. Everybody's uncomfortable. You get up on stage and I still shake. But, just be ready to show people what you're all about. Get them to feel like they can invest that limited currency of time into you and feel like it's a good thing that they did. And don't take it for granted. I mean, we all know what it feels like to waste a lot of time on somebody / something. And you go, thank God life is as long as it is, even though it's pretty short. You can waste 10 years on something and it seems like a substantial amount of time, but you don't want to, you're going to be very cautious about doing that again. Because then 20 years, it's a bit more time there, especially in your youth. So it's all about that valuing of this time and that time, but also that impression that you leave with people. What are you putting out there? And I'm a very strong proponent of social responsibility. Like that's my biggest, loudest thing I'll always yell about to the day I stop doing this. And even after when I'm watching it, just people having that ability to have the impressionable people who are listening and using that for the purposes of enriching the people around them and making them feel good, making an inclusive environment, not using that as an opportunity to, as we've seen with this industry, take advantage of people. Because oh my God, I mean, I've been to St. Jude Children's Hospital 5 times in that charity. I've met some of the most amazing people in my life, but at the same time, the wolf in sheep's clothing, if you will, with some people that you meet out there, and it's just like, of course, I was so friendly with some of these people, and they were representing other streamers, and then you get them in an environment where they're talking about, oh, well, this is what I did in this area, and I did this and this and this, and you're just like, you're talking about somebody else that I know, and yikes. Once again, we're the internet. There's no criminal record background check for you to become a big Minecrafter today. So
so that's definitely a lot to unpack. I do want to kind of switch gears a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I'm all over the road.
Well, that's why we watch you, man.
Thank God.
The huge majority of Twitch streamers are single. And from my experience watching other streamers, when people get into relationships, especially with another streamer, they kind of have this struggle of like how to balance their job, which is streaming for a lot of these people, and balancing their relationships. And I don't want to, and I also want to be clear that I don't want to make a general statement by saying that it doesn't work for everybody, right? But for you, you're married to somebody. I don't know if they stream. Nope. Do they? No, they don't. Nope. So given that you mentioned earlier, you said like you wake up, you go to work, and then you stream or something like that. I don't know if that's the exact order. How do you balance your relationship with your wife and all of these other activities that you want to do?
Make time. If you love something, you'll make it work. I mean, that's really what it is. Yeah. Well, see, a lot of these content creators too, the strongest power to be able to get somebody in your channel is drama. And that's something that you actively subscribe to. It's so easy to make drama. That's how the news does it. We're raised to the news literally gets people to watch by saying, tonight at 8, we're going to tell you the number one reason people are getting sick from eating Pop-Tarts. And it's like, what's the reason? I don't want to buy Pop-Tarts. I'll have to tune in. And nowadays, what clickbait websites do that. YouTube channels are encouraged to do that. Get people to click on the video. Some people do it so tactfully, some people do use it so kind of viciously, and it's like it's crazy to see that, but that's how you do it. Like my title for Don't Starve is new drops, come and check this out, the Master of Chesters is online, like, right, but some people, they do get in relationships. They understand that there's drama in relationships, but that's views for both of them. That's what they want to do. For me, my wife has her own hobbies. She has those things that she does. She's into cosplay. She loves to do that. She's, building aquariums now. She loves to do that. If I was in charge of one of those aquariums, all the fish would probably die. So she doesn't put me in charge of those. She's laughing right there, But but that's the thing is, like, I think that's a big, strong dynamic in my relationship with her, and I think inevitably that's why we do so well, is because we love the way that each other loves what we do. Like, my wife can see when I first started doing this, and even thereafter, how much I adore doing this. I love this. I have all this creative energy bottled up. Can you imagine trying to bottle up this Niagara Falls of words? Can you imagine having to listen to it? Like, she has to hear it, but she's got some pretty good noise canceling headphones. So she, you laugh, but I'm serious. But all kidding aside, she gets it. And I think that's a big part of a relationship, is understanding another person. So, as you said, some of these relationships end up working really well. But that is an understanding. If you take time to understand people, to communicate with people, to get people together and really do that, that's great. But a lot of people, show business can get the best of you. Your audiences can get the best of you. I'm dealing with that with a friend of mine for a long time. Him and I are having a little bit of a falling out. It's not dramatic or bad, but it's going to end up being a situation where, I don't communicate as much with him anymore. And I'm kind of explaining to him, you were, for like 2 years, you didn't communicate with me. There was times I tried to reach out. There was no reciprocation. And now you're coming back and you're like, hey, I'm back. And I'm just like, I don't know about that, right? I don't know about that. And it's not necessarily that we hate each other, that I don't like them. It's just that, the respect for the communication or the relationship just kind of decayed a little bit because they found something better to do in that time. So I would say, that's a good example of, you get into a relationship with somebody, you have two audiences that you're dealing with, you have dynamics that happen. I say something on one of my streams, they hear it through the audience in another one of those streams. You need to be able to go back to that person and say, that's not what was said. Here's what's said. Here's the context to it. And especially in the moment when you're mad about something, like you get mad at your significant other, you're just like, God damn it, what am I doing? You go through the thought process of, I made mistakes. Everybody does that. That's normal. But as you get older, you're just like, they made the mistake marrying me. Let's be honest. But yeah, I mean, it's all contextually understanding and understanding that other person, just like I talk about my audience. They're people with lives and dynamics and bad days and good days and days where they can't afford to eat or days where, somebody in their family dies or something like that. Your significant other is the most important in that scenario. So there are a lot of people I know who can't stream anymore once they get into a relationship. It just doesn't work for their dynamic anymore. Or both of them are streamers and one of them quits because it just creates such a sense of, people have a time, like me and my wife's relationship. A lot of our time is not spent with each other, even though we're 10 feet away from each other. We understand that we're following our pursuits and our passions, and we're young ones, and we care very much about each other. And like I said, we make time for each other. It's very, very important. And that one took a little bit longer for me to figure out. I actually, that was actually a revelation by my brother. First year I did this, I didn't miss a day because I saw, all these people streak. Yeah. You got to do a nonstop streak. And I missed my nephew's birthdays that year. I missed my brother's birthday, and I missed my wife's birthday. I missed my birthday. And I was like, my brother said to me, you missed a lot this year. And I was just like, you're right. And I said to my audience, I said, I missed a lot this year. My audience is like, you're a fool. We told you to take days off. What are you trying to prove? So now I take 2 days off a week. So, and they're happier than ever with me, and I'm happier than ever. But it's something you learn. It's like all the relationships and everything else. You learn how to manage it, and sometimes it doesn't work, but sometimes it does. And you're going to go through struggle, and you're going to go through adversity, and you're going to go through. But that's what strengthens the relationship. Back to the original statement, bad things make a relationship stronger, and if they don't, well, then that's where the relationship usually takes a turn for the worst, and it either ends or it decays. And you know, I think that's a big part of it. And I'm very, very lucky, very, very lucky to have a understanding and loving wife the way that I do, and a very supportive family after years of, you're not going to go anywhere in that computer. My brother is the first person to buy his merch, and all my nephews are, you know, my youngest nephew wants to be a YouTuber. So we bring him to conventions and such. So we teach him the ropes. So we let him know that, you know, conventions aren't just about shaking hands and getting hugs and meeting people and developers and directors and everything. Your feet hurt at the end of the day. My wife's a cosplayer. Every part of her body hurts at the end of the day. So, and that's the reality. But if you like something enough where you're able to deal with all that stuff, then this is for you. The worst day I ever had streaming, I couldn't even think about it off the top of my head of what that could be. There's a couple of moments where it was just tough streaming and it's just a bad day. Nobody showed up, things like that. I would still face that every day to do this. If it meant I had to do that once a week or once a month or once a year, I would do it because I love this. This is, it almost feels like it's what I'm made for. Yeah. And I think that emanates. And I think that the people who care about you notice that. And they're just like, okay, you know, I love watching his passion. Somebody asked her once and she goes, I love to watch his passion. Yeah. So I was like, yeah. That's convince somebody to deal with me and let them know, you know, they see it. Like that's a big thing after years of it. Like your parents say, no, computer's bad for you. For somebody to, when I first start dating them, I meet them on Ragnarok, and my parents watched her bring her computer over to my house because I was still living with my parents at the time, and they would see her bring the computer over, and they were just like, what the there's other people out there like our son. That was a big moment. I was like, I told you guys, you didn't listen.
That's really awesome.
I'm very lucky.
You are. You know, it's funny is like, I had so many of these questions that I wanted to ask you, but pretty much you've answered all of them. And so like, I kind of find myself on my toes this entire time because I'm like, what the hell can I continue this with? But I think it says a lot about you and how thoughtful you are when it comes to not just your stream, but also relationships, your community. And, you know, I think what people will come away with by watching or listening to the show is that you have this kind of, I don't want to say theology, it's not a religion, but like this kind of philosophy that kind of really is very well-rounded and is actually very easy to follow. And it makes it's a lot of common sense.
I think simplicity is the key to it. It really is if you tell people like, listen, it's not just don't worry about it, bro. It'll go away. You know, it's not quite like that, but I guess it's more or less, if I had to summarize it, it's a case of life is life, whether we like it or not. What happens in it, what's going to happen in it. We have our influences. Sometimes we don't, but like, enjoy the ride, I guess. You know, it's easy for me to say because, you know, my situation is a lot better than most people. Sometimes that can be construed as condescending, or somebody's struggling every day where they're working 18 hours a day or whatever it is. And I empathize tremendously with that. But like, at somewhere along the line, you have to try to extract some good as hard as it could be out of there, if not for you, but the people around you, you know. I would honestly say, like, I love streaming and everything else, but if for some reason I found out that, you know, it was causing harm to my wife or something else, that'd be it. I told her straight up, and I tell her, she has the ultimate kill switch to this. If you think that this is harming me or harming you or harming anything else, it's down. It's done. I might protest, I might be upset, I might be sad, but I know that it's in the right place, right? Yeah. So, but that's what it comes down to, is this moment right now is something that happened, and now it's gone, and now another moment's happening, and one day those moments will be over, and then you won't worry about anything because we don't feel anything after that, depending on what you believe. But you know, but those moments are also being shared by other people, and you can do as you wish with those moments, and there's repercussions and there's trajectories for everything that goes on there. Yeah. And you don't have to sit and think about that every moment of the day. And believe it or not, I don't either. But I try to say, I'm having a lot of fun in this moment right now, and I'm looking at my chat and they're having fun. Let's extend this moment a little bit longer before we have to get back to the reality of what's going on around us. Yeah. You know, because we got a lot of stuff to deal with as a society, both domestically and internationally over the next couple of years, and we might not get those moments again. So, you know,
for sure. Well, I gotta say, I learned a lot from you, just like listening to you like talk and stuff like that. And it's like, I think it's, and I do hope that a lot of people learn from this conversation, because I do genuinely think that, you know, some of the stuff that you've said, I believe in a lot of it, you know, myself, in something that I apply to my own channels. That's so weird to say now, but
there you go. Well, that's okay. That's good. That means you're growing, you're expanding. Yeah, you celebrate it as an expansion. We're excited to announce our expansion. That's what corporations do. At the end of the day, that's what we are. We're businesses. Pretty much.
And, you know, like, I do think, I do hope that people find inspiration to what we talked about. Because I think, you know, especially in this day and age, like, I think people need a lot more of that. Like, to be inspired, to be motivated, to be in a better place. Yes, it is going to be harder, but at the end of the day, it's all going to be so worth it.
I think there's a lot of people who love it, who are afraid to take that chance, and they don't feel any inspiration because they're surrounded by similar things that I was when I was growing up. And they're just like, you know what? They're right. There is no chance of this. And it's like, no, there is. If you want to do something bad enough, you will make it work. Yeah. You will make it work. And I think that's key to success and finding happiness, really. I mean, is making it work no matter which way you can.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Dizzy. Well, where can we find you? And, you know, social media and everything, Twitch. I mean, obviously, we've been talking a lot about Twitch today. So let our audience know, like, where people can find you so they can hear more of your words of wisdom.
Oh, boy. Depending on which day you come in. Some days I'll be screaming about hockey. But easiest way to find me, diz.tv. I own that domain. It's the best thing I own. Or if you can't remember diz.tv, dizzy.tv is mine, too. DizzyDizaster is my name. There's a Z in disaster because, you know, I wanted to make it so all your autocorrects break. So it's DizzyDizaster, and I'm on every social media under the sun. I'm DizTV on Instagram. I'm DizDotTV on Twitter, but everywhere else I'm pretty much DizzyDizaster, and that includes YouTube, TikTok, VKontakte if you're Russian, you know where to find me there. Telegram, things like that. So I'm all over the place, and that's important to getting yourself out there because you don't know where you're going to be successful. I mean, look at TikTok versus Twitch. So
yeah, of course. Well, Ben, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. Like, finally, I'm trying to think. It's been 7 or 8 years probably since we last spoke, like in person. Yep. And, you know, I really want to thank you again for being on the show.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. I mean, you spend, like I said, time is very valuable. So I appreciate you spending your time with me. But also, don't wait another 8 years to do another one. Yeah, I'll be here in 8 years. I can pretty much guarantee it based on the way the last 8 years went. But, you know, whenever you need anything, I am the easiest person to get a hold of, as you can see. So
definitely.
Awesome.
And of course, thank you for everybody who listened and watched the show. Remember that we always have a new episode every Wednesday. I don't know why. It seems to just work at like 12 midnight Pacific time. It's never changed over the past 10 years.
Mine's at 1 a.m. Eastern. So, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, listeners/viewers, we don't exist without you. So you control our destiny. And thank you for that.
It almost sounds like a veiled threat, but I know that's not what you meant.
It could be. I guess we're going to have to tune in next week to find out.
That's right. When there's like a new guest and, of course, like new shenanigans. So until next week, guys, we'll see you guys later and happy gaming.